The wind came first, hard, dry and sharp enough to slice the breath from a man's lungs, and then the sound followed. The distant crack of a rifle, flat and final, rolling across the scrub like thunder without rain. A rider pitched from his saddle at the far edge of Crawford Ranch, hitting the dust before he even knew he was dead. Horses screamed, men shouted, and somewhere on the high ground a lone figure lowered his rifle, already searching for the next target. In the Wild West, trouble usually rode in loud. This time it arrived quiet, precise, and unforgiving. By the time the echo died, everyone in the valley knew the truth. The sniper of Little Round Top had chosen a side. Crawford Ranch lay stretched across a shallow basin, ringed by broken hills and one cruel rise of stone the locals called Little Round Top, a name borrowed from an older war, whispered by veterans who had survived it and feared men who had mastered it. The ranch had water when the rest of the land was thirst, grass when the plains burned brown, and fences that marked ownership in a country where lines were often erased with blood. For years it had stood because the Crawfords were stubborn and fair, paying wages on time and bullets only when forced. That fairness had made enemies. They came at dawn, hired guns in dust-colored coats, badges pinned without law behind them, riding under the confidence of men paid to win. Their employer, Silas Boone, wanted the water rights and the land beneath them. He wanted Crawford Ranch erased, its people scattered like chaff. Boone had money, men, and a reputation for patience. What he did not expect was a ghost from another battlefield. Elias Mercer watched through his scope as the attackers formed their line. From Little Round Top, the world narrowed to breathing and distance, wind and weight. He lay prone among rocks warmed by yesterday's sun, the smell of oil and iron steadying him. Elias had learned this calm long before the West learned it when boys became soldiers and hills became names that followed them home. He had sworn never to use that skill again, had broken that oath the moment Boone's men burned a widow's well 2 towns back. Crawford Ranch was the line he would not let them cross. Below, the Crawfords scrambled. Thomas Crawford, gray-bearded and broad-shouldered, dragged a crate of ammunition towards the barn while his daughter, Anna, shouted orders with a voice that carried like a bell. She moved with purpose, fear sharpened into action. Elias noticed her because she didn't run when the first man fell. She looked up, scanning the ridge, eyes narrowing as if she could feel the weight of his gaze. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then Boone's men opened fire. Bullets stitched the fence rails, splintering oak. Cattle bawled and bolted. Dust leapt in violent fountains. Elias fired again, measured, controlled. A man clutching a shotgun folded his weapon, spinning away. Another dropped from his horse, the animal racing. Riderless across the basin, panic crept into the attackers' ranks like a sickness. They had not planned for death to come from above, unseen and exact. Boone himself was not there, he never was, but his lieutenant, Hank Rourke, was a veteran of bad work and worse decisions. Rourke shouted for cover, sending men to flank the hill. Elias adjusted, calculating routes and angles, knowing he could not hold the high ground forever. He had come prepared for a fight, not a siege. Down at the ranch house, Anna loaded rifles and passed them out, her hand steady. "We hold," she said. "We don't break." Her father nodded, pride and fear warring on his lined face. The ranch hands, Mexican vaqueros, drifters who'd stayed, boys barely grown, took positions. They trusted the hill without knowing who owned it. By mid-morning, the basin stank of gunpowder and blood. The attackers pulled back, nursing wounds and pride. Rourke spat and cursed the ridge, promising return. Elias watched them go, knowing promises like that were paid in lives. He slid back from the edge and began the careful descent, moving when the wind covered him, when the sun threw false shadows. He reached the ranch by a dry arroyo, boots silent on stone. A rifle barrel found his chest before he cleared the bank. "Easy," Anna said, eyes locked on his. "You the one on the hill?" Elias raised his hand slowly. "Looks like." She studied him, taking in the scars. The old uniform coat cut down to a working jacket, the calm that didn't belong to drifters. "Why?" He glanced back towards Little Round Top. "Because some hills teach you things. And because Boone doesn't get to win." Thomas Crawford approached, lowering Anna's rifle with a gentle hand. "You saved lives today," he said. "That earns you a meal and a bed if you'll take them." Elias nodded once. "I won't stay long." He stayed. Boone's answer came 2 days later with fire. They struck the outbuildings at night, hoping smoke would blind the ridge. Elias countered with silence, taking out torchbearers before flame could spread. When Boone's men tried to rush the house, they found the Crawfords ready, rifles braced, courage hard as iron. The fight raged under a moon pale as bone, and when it ended, the attackers withdrew again, leaving bodies and the knowledge that Crawford Ranch would not fall easy. Between battles, Elias repaired fences, cleaned weapons, and spoke little. Anna watched him work, recognizing a loneliness she knew too well. Her mother had died years before, taken by fever. The ranch had become a promise she refused to break. At night, Elias told Thomas stories of the old war. Not glory, but mud and fear and the weight of choosing where to stand. Thomas listened, understanding that men like Elias carried their pasts like loaded guns. Boone arrived on the third morning, dressed clean and smiling thin. He rode close enough to shout terms, his confidence restored by numbers. "Walk away," he called. "I'll make it worth your while." Elias stepped onto the porch, rifle resting easy. "You won't." Boone's smile tightened. "You're one man." "So were you," Elias replied once. The final fight came fast and brutal. Boone's men charged, believing weight would break resistance. Elias moved like memory, firing, shifting, calling shots. The Crawfords held the line, Anna at the center, fierce and unyielding. When Boone fell, wounded, not dead, his men broke. Some ran, some surrendered. The basin fell quiet again, the wind carrying away the smoke. After, the law arrived late, as it often did, to collect what was left. Boone would live to stand trial, stripped of his certainty. Crawford Ranch stood scarred but unbroken. Elias packed at dawn. Anna met him by the fence, the land glowing gold in the early light. "You could stay," she said. "This place could use someone who knows how to stand." He smiled, a small, tired thing. "So could the next hill." She nodded, understanding. As he walked away, Little Round Top watched over the basin. Just another rise of stone to most. But to those who knew, a reminder, when the worst came, one man chose where to stand, and that was enough. The night after Boone's first retreat did not bring rest. It brought listening. Crawford Ranch lay awake beneath a sky littered with cold stars, every creak of timber and whisper of wind sounding like a footstep. Elias Mercer sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, oiling the bolt by feel, his eyes never quite leaving the dark line where the basin rose toward Little Round Top. He knew men like Boone's did not leave a thing unfinished. They counted on fear to do the work that bullets could not. Inside, the house breathed with the soft sounds of endurance, boots drying by the stove, a kettle settling, low voices trading courage for calm. Anna moved among them, quiet as a thought, setting watches, counting rounds, measuring hope in practical amounts. When she stepped out onto the porch, Elias felt it before he saw it, the way some people brought a steadiness with them. "You hear anything?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. "That's what worries me." She leaned against the rail, eyes adjusting to the dark. "My father says men like Boone always come back louder. They want the last sound to be theirs." Elias nodded. "They'll try fire again. Smoke hides mistakes." They stood in silence, the world narrowing to the scrape of a match struck, somewhere far off, only it wasn't there. And both of them relaxed by a fraction. Anna studied him then. The lines time had cut into his face, the way his hands never quite rested. "You don't sleep much." "I sleep when the wind tells me to," he replied. Tonight it hasn't. Dawn found them still standing, and the light brought news carried on hoofbeats. A rider came in from the east, hat in hand, fear plain as sweat. He told of Boone's camp moving, of wagons and extra men, of a preacher hired to bless the work and bury the dead. Elias listened without comment, already mapping the ground in his head, already seeing the fight that wanted to be born. By noon, the heat pressed down like a held breath. Elias climbed a Little Round Top again, slower this time, careful to leave no sign. From the crown he could see everything. The ranch laid bare, the dry creek beds that could hide men, the shimmer of dust that betrayed movement miles away. He set markers in his mind, chose lines of fire, rehearsed loss. Below, Anna drilled the hands. She corrected grips, shifted stances, spoke of angles and patience. When doubt surfaced, she met it head on. "We hold because this is ours," she said. "Because if we don't, there won't be a place left that is." The attack came with the sun at its highest. Boone's men spread wide, cautious now, learning the cost of haste. Elias waited until the first shot mattered, then took it. The basin answered with chaos. Shots cracked and echoed, dust leapt, men shouted names that did not answer back. Boone himself stayed back, watching through field glasses, calculating like a merchant. When a flank threatened the barn, Anna led the counter, her voice cutting through fear. Elias covered her advance, trusting her to move when he needed her to. They were a machine then, hill and house, breath and trigger. It ended again in withdrawal, Boone's patience thinning. As the dust settled, Elias felt the familiar ache settle into his bones, the knowledge that each victory only sharpened the next blade. He descended at dusk, meeting Anna by the fence where the light turned the land to gold. "This isn't over," she said. "No," Elias answered, "but it will be decided." Somewhere beyond the hills, Boone planned. And on Little Round Top, the wind finally shifted, as if the land itself had chosen to listen.